What we are doing in the Lords is exactly what our parliamentary democracy is requiring of us. You know, we are scrutinising legislation and sending it back to the Commons to ask them to think again. We're not making the final decision. We are not driving Brexit or thwarting Brexit at all.
And I think we can see the Mail headline tomorrow, if they put it up, time to pull the plug on the Lords. Bill Cash, you don't believe in pulling the plug on the Lords, do you? You wouldn't even if they did reject this.
I am very concerned, actually, about the manner in which what I regard as a flagrant abuse of the procedures at the moment in the Lords is going to cause an enormous amount of trouble.
What's the abuse? Because they're voting the way they feel.
Well, right at the beginning, you mentioned the Salisbury Convention, and that also refers to wrecking amendments. Now, some of these amendments are wrecking amendments, and in fact, the Lords are even suggesting that they are. And basically, there's another side to it, which is about democracy. The whole of the European Union and its democratic system, so-called, is actually done behind closed doors. It is done
but that's nothing to do with the Lords. I mean,
well, it is, because you talked about democracy at the beginning.
No, I want Ross to answer the Salisbury Convention point.
Yeah.
You're not meant to do things if it's in a manifesto.
What we are doing is scrutinising legislation and sending it back for the Commons to think again. Indeed, a number of members of the House of Commons have asked us to send this back to them because they want the debate again. Circumstances have changed.
Well, that is the truth, and actually that's exactly what is happening. There are a certain number. Wait a minute.
Brexit.
There are a certain number of Remainer Conservative MPs who, if they have enough people, if they do what some of them are threatening to do, actually receiving the amendments from the House of Lords, and we know there have been discussions going on between them, so for practical purposes, what the Lords is doing is actually magnifying the lack of democracy.
I'm puzzled.
No, I'm not.
Because you're talking about elected people doing the dirty work.
I mean, saying
all they're doing is passing the ball to the elected.
That is not the way the system works. What's happening is that the unelected Lords are coming up with a number of wrecking amendments. There are a lot more,
but hang on,
they are wrecking amendments.
What is your fear? Because if the MPs don't vote for them, the elected MPs don't vote for them, what damage can Ros Altmann do?
It's only because the House of Commons has these MPs in it who themselves
are elected.
Yes, but wait a minute, Evan. They have actually already voted for the Referendum Act. They have already voted for the Article 50 Act. They're not respecting the referendum.
We are respecting the referendum.
Right, so are you respecting the referendum?
Absolutely.
Some say you're pulling
the referendum requires us to negotiate exit from the EU. We have triggered Article 50, respecting the referendum. We are in negotiations, respecting the referendum, but the referendum didn't give us a direction of travel. It didn't say hard Brexit, soft Brexit, leave the single market or not leave the single market. It's up to Parliament to find the best way forward.
Right. So that is actually the nub of this argument, isn't it, Bill Cash?
On the customs and
there's a
single
disagreement about what the interpretation of the people's will is.
Well,
and the elected members will in the end make that, because you will give up if elected members insist on
We are not going to make the final
decision.
decision. I am clear on that. Our role is to send it back to think again.
But
it is up to the elected House to make the decision.
So the position is clear. So Bill Cash, you get the last word.
It's very simply, the fact is the referendum itself said leave or remain, and that included in the leaving the customs union, the single market. And actually what's happening is that now there is a movement which is coming from the House of Lords into the House of Commons, and then you're going to find that there will be a breach of the manifesto by the people who vote for the customs union and the single market in the Commons by virtue of the amendments that have been passed in the Lords. And on the EEA amendment, which Ros was talking about only yesterday in the House of Lords, actually the fact is that that EEA amendment is itself inconsistent with our position on the EU as a result of the referendum.
It's our parliamentary democracy, and Parliament is taking
so
control
sorry.
of
It's a very undemocratic way to go about it.
It's such an interesting discussion. Thanks both very much indeed.